being in such an intense, stressful situation day in and day out.
Forced trauma, basically.
It's like being transported to an alien
no one cares
world.
what you went through.
Even if they do care, it's impossible for them to care. It was April of 2023 that I came to Taiwan. Got on the HSR down to Kaohsiung. It seems pretty chill here.
Cole Fogle here, and today I am with, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Topher, Uncle Topher.
Are you a susu or a bobo, or are you like a younger uncle or an older uncle?
I'd like to think I'm a younger uncle. I am actually an uncle. That's why I started the YouTube channel. It's for my nieces and nephews.
Why Topher?
Christopher.
Oh, Christopher.
Yeah.
Oh, that's clever.
There's just so many Chris's in my generation.
I have a few that I know.
Yeah, it was a real popular name that in my family I've been just called Topher.
Where are you from originally?
From the USA. I'm an American.
What part of the USA?
I was born in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains, and then moved around all over the USA, mostly in the Midwest and South.
Where's the first place you ever went in your life from America?
Outside of USA?
Yeah.
When I was 18, went to the Bahamas.
Ooh,
A small little cruise on the Bahamas with my family, just a family vacation. 4-hour cruise, maybe. These were so rocky. Everybody on the ship started vomiting.
Oh my God.
It was such a crazy memory.
Did you vomit as well?
No, my dad had the forethought to get us these the anti-vomit pills and the little bands.
Oh, okay.
And we were the only ones on the ship besides the crew who weren't throwing up. People just like lying in the hallways, just throwing in the puke bags.
This is from the shaky waters?
Yeah, from the shaky waters. That was my first trip outside of the U.S. That was my first time even seeing the ocean.
You were telling me one of your professions originally.
Yeah. So my first profession outside of university, actually even kind of in university, because I was a cadet. I had a scholarship there, but that means I had to join the U.S. Army.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was a great deal because the last time U.S. was at war was the 3-day Gulf War.
Right. What year are we talking about that you joined the Army?
I actually got commissioned as a second lieutenant in 2001.
Okay.
May of 2001. Cool. And then a few months later is when the September 11th attacks happened.
Wow. There must have been serious tension during that time.
Oh my gosh, yes. Things got real fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 9/11 attacks started basically right after I started the officer training. And so I already knew which unit I was going to, which was the 101st Airborne Air Assault, which was one of the more premier units. So I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to combat.
You mean you were the guy that jumps out of the airplane, like parachute?
They use a lot of helicopters. And, I learned how to rappel out of a helicopter and that kind of thing. I wouldn't call it skydiving. It's not skydiving.
You've jumped out of an airplane.
I've jumped out of airplanes, about 8 times.
What was the first time? What did that feel like, jumping out of an airplane?
That was one of the most terrifying moments of my life.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it was insane because it's not like skydiving. Yeah. It's
You're lower to the ground.
Yeah, much lower. And so the idea is to get as many soldiers down to the ground as fast as possible, safely.
Yeah.
Safely.
Does the parachute open automatically when you jump?
Yeah. There's a cord that's attached to the plane. So when you jump out, that cord opens up your parachute. You have to be very careful because if you accidentally get that cord wrapped around your arm, it'll take your arm off.
That's actually happened to people?
Oh, many times. Oh. So that first jump, I was actually the last guy out of the door. So I was just following the people in front of me. You're holding up the cord. Jumped out of the plane, you're supposed to count to 5. Yeah. And that's when the chute should open, around the 5-second mark. Sometimes things go wrong. I counted to 5 way too fast. My helmet wasn't on tight enough. It's like stepping into a hurricane. And the helmet got over my eyes, I couldn't see, and I counted too fast, and I thought I was just free falling down, and eventually, poof, I felt the jerk of the chute opening.
That must have been relieving.
Oh my gosh. But people, of course, would get nervous, especially on their first jump. This was everybody's first jump. And so they were just zipping all over this place and crashing into each other and all that.
When you landed that first time, were you going right into battle?
No, this was all training. This was all training. My second time out of the U.S. was deploying to Iraq. I was actually in the invasion going into Iraq,
You shooting, people shooting at you?
Yeah, a lot of people shooting.
Did you lose any comrades? Like, did you...
Friends of mine have been killed in Iraq,
Rough. Did you suffer, like, what they call like post-traumatic stress from this? Like, did you
Absolutely.
Did you need to work things out when you got back?
Absolutely, 100%.
How did you work things out?
Poorly.
Alcohol or
A lot of alcohol. Being in such an intense, stressful situation day in and day out.
Forced trauma, basically.
Yeah, it is. It's forced trauma.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden being back into the
like,
U.S.
People buying coffee and hamburgers.
Yeah, and it's like being transported to an alien
no one cares
world.
what you went through.
Even if they do care,
Not
it's
that, sorry,
impossible
obviously,
for them
that's
to
what I
care.
mean, yeah.
It's like trying to explain colors to a blind person.
Yeah. You have to be in combat to understand.
It's very
Emotionally.
difficult. You know, alcohol, it's a very big part of that culture, that military culture.
Turning to the bottle, yeah.
Yeah, and so I definitely drank way too much. Well, I left the military eventually, and you know, I was just tired of causing suffering.
Yeah.
And I felt very lied to by the government. I was a little too naive. Yeah, as a young adult, I was a little naive. And then I was pretty much forced to wake up and grow up quickly and realize that most of what was happening with that war, with most wars, it was just a war over resources. Just
money and power.
There to get people richer.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't to spread democracy or make people's lives
But that was
better
what
or
most
any
of the soldiers believed that, obviously.
There's a reason why young people are recruited into the military. You're easy to fool.
Yeah, of course.
Not trying to insult any young people out there,
not,
you know, but you know, there's an interesting thing. Anytime that there is a war movie that comes out, recruitment numbers go up.
Oh, I'm sure, because it makes you feel emotional.
Yeah.
And a connection to your country.
Yeah, and you want to feel important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all want to feel important, right?
Yeah, and a part of something bigger. And you know, it
No,
will give you that.
I can wrap my head around why a soldier would feel that way, because you're doing something for your country.
Yeah.
It's just, is it good or bad, whatever that thing is that you're doing, you know?
I was the attacker in that sense.
Yeah.
Right? And so if I was in a nation that was being attacked,
different story.
It would be a different story.
Yeah.
You're actually fighting for survival. You're fighting for your culture. You're fighting for your family. It's a different story there.
So did you have a guilt when you came back?
Yeah.
You felt bad about it?
Yeah, there were at times. It took me a while to understand those feelings and unpack them.
But you figured out it wasn't your fault, right? I assume you came to that realization that...
Yeah, I had I remember the moment actually. I was walking and kind of had the epiphany that I was just kind of basically a cog in a machine. So even though I was a part of very violent actions, even if I wasn't there, those violent actions would still happen. Even if I was there and I decided I wasn't going to partake, the violence would have still happened.
Regardless,
Regardless.
That's a good realization.
And I was just making the best decisions I could make at the time.
Yeah.
And I literally felt like a weight off my shoulders.
It should be a weight off your shoulders, because I mean, I agree about the cog in the wheel. That's big. It's heavy. Is what
it
I'm
was
saying.
pretty heavy.
It's pretty heavy. I mean, I'm
and
glad
alcohol is not the way to solve those feelings.
Definitely not. That's going to exasperate those feelings.
It makes them worse. Yeah.
So then, when you got out of the military, you said you had a job, kind of a corporate kind of job.
Yeah, I went right into corporate America, which was another mistake. Shouldn't have done that. So I went into a fairly big international construction company, and I worked for them for a while. And it was kind of crazy going from very important meetings in the Army to going to meetings where I'd sit there for like 2 hours about what color will the paint be.
Could this
in
be
the
any more
bathroom.
Opposite, like being in the Army and wearing a shirt and tie in like a business meeting?
Oh my gosh, I was like, this is such BS. I'm wasting my time.
It probably was hurting you emotionally, right?
Yeah, it helped fuel the alcoholism.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so I wouldn't have called myself an alcoholic then, but I was basically like a functional alcoholic. I was drinking every day. I was drinking too much.
Well, what got you out of that path?
The realization that I was wasting my time.
Yeah.
And the only resource you're always losing is time.
Oh, so true.
Right? Money can come and go. Status can come and go. Friends, whatever.
Yeah.
It all can come and go. You can get more money down the road. The only thing you're always losing is time.
Watching my kids grow up, I agree with you.
I was just tired of wasting my time trading it for money, and I was miserable.
Yeah.
You know, I was making a lot of money, but
Yeah.
I was not happy.
I have another friend, my friend Curtis, who was in the corporate world. Like I'm hearing him in your voice. Like I think
Yeah.
a lot of people go through this epiphany and this realization.
It's not an uncommon story.
Yeah, spiritual awakening in a way to come to this realization.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'm not a very religious, I'm not at all a religious person, and I have become a little more spiritual the older I get. So I decided to leave that. I started to get back into meditation.
Cool.
I learned meditating from my father when I was young.
Your dad was a meditator.
Yeah, he was a veteran too. I think it helped him, and it helped me a lot.
I like how you went from being a soldier to then a corporate guy with an alcohol issue to then suddenly becoming a mindful being.
I'm making it sound more suddenly than.
No, I'm sure. No,
it was a growth process
I'm
for
sure.
sure. And it's funny because at like 35, I thought I had figured it out. And then at 37, I realized more. And then,
aren't the 40s the best though?
You know, I love
mean,
being in my 40s.
I could be wrong.
I feel I'm mature and old enough now to know that I don't know very much.
Right.
And I'm always learning. And
You
it's
know
okay.
nothing, and that's okay.
It's okay
Yeah.
to say you don't know something.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care as much about status anymore or
No.
being embarrassed.
Because you could really live your whole life for other people, like for the whatever the status that you're looking for, and really one day you're going to be lying down to rest, like at the end of your life, and that's going to be a regret. Like,
yeah, and that's an unfortunate truth.
Yeah.
If you want to avoid that, you have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And then just be true to who you are.
100%. Be authentic.
Authentic. Basically, I decided I was just going to try and do things that I thought were interesting and made myself happy. And that
Sounds good.
Did a lot of traveling around the U.S. I ended up back in Colorado, and I was there for a few years working in a comic book store.
Cool.
Actually, it was fun. It was cool.
I love comic books.
I love them too. I've done a lot of things in between too. You know, I worked on farms, I was a handyman. It was at that point that I was really getting the travel itch, the adventure itch.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, I think I'm gonna try living in East Asia. I've always been into like Japanese culture and Chinese culture, the Kung Fu movies and the anime and all
I was just gonna
that.
say, yeah.
I knew a few people who had taught English out in Japan.
Cool.
And they described it as pretty chill job.
It's a beautiful country.
Yeah, that you know, they had nothing but good things to say. That's how I got into teaching English.
Cool. Wait, how long were you in Japan for?
I was in Japan for a little over a year.
Cool.
I left Japan not because I really wanted to leave Japan, but there was some stuff happening back home with health in my family. Things got cool. And so I left the U.S. again, and this time I went to Vietnam. I was really into the idea of the digital nomad.
Yeah,
so I was teaching English online at that point.
It's a popular thing right now, being a digital nomad.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle. But I lived in a couple of cities in Vietnam. I spent some time in Thailand, all the while I was teaching English online.
Cool.
To Chinese students.
Oh, okay.
And then I was in Vietnam when the pandemic started. And I had students in Wuhan. They were telling me like, oh, I'm not in school because there's
Uncle
this virus.
Topher, I think you need to leave Asia.
Yeah.
What was your move then from Vietnam?
Straight back to the U.S.
Back to Colorado?
Yeah, right back to where the family lives.
And then were you in Colorado through the whole pandemic?
Yeah, I was in Colorado through the whole pandemic, and that was not cool. A lot of it was reverse culture shock.
Yeah.
I did not want to be back in the U.S. Huge culture split happening in the U.S., and I don't really find myself on either side.
So you're there in 2020, and then...
A few things made me stay longer than I needed to. The biggest reason I stayed in the U.S. was because my old dog was in her final years.
What was her name?
Jane. I called her Jane Doe Dog.
I was just gonna say
found
Jane.
her out in the woods, and she had been abandoned as maybe a one-year-old dog. And she was living with my sister and my sister's family for a while I was in Vietnam, when I was in Japan.
Oh, so you were there until she passed?
Yeah, I decided,
well,
you know,
beautiful.
this dog's
to
on
be there for her
last leg. I might as well stay with her until she passes.
I mean, if that was your excuse, that sounds beautiful.
She's a good dog.
So, yeah, so how long were you in the U.S. before you moved again?
It was April of 2023 that I came to Taiwan.
What was the day you arrived like? Can you paint me a picture of like Taoyuan
I
Airport?
arrived early morning and everything was just starting to open up in the airport. Got a SIM card, got on the HSR down to Kaohsiung.
Oh, you immediately
Went to Kaohsiung.
Ah, the day you arrived, you didn't do any Taipei. You went right to Kaohsiung.
Right to Kaohsiung. Yeah, right to
Good
Kaohsiung.
city. Why Kaohsiung?
I knew, well, it has good public transportation.
It's great.
The weather's good. It seems pretty chill here.
It's very
compared
chill.
to Taipei.
Yeah.
It's not as crowded.
Yeah, agreed. Cheaper than Taipei as well.
Yeah, it's a little cheaper than Taipei.
Yeah.
So that's good. So yeah, I knew that if I was going to like any city in Taiwan, it would be Kaohsiung.
What's the most exciting food that you've eaten since you've been here? Or that you didn't like, where you were like, ooh?
Braised pork knuckle.
Oh yeah, so good.
I'm not sure if I would call it so good. It's definitely unique.
Pig knuckle, yeah.
Yeah, it's not bad,
Chewy.
but I wouldn't call it great.
Right.
Yeah, the pig's blood rice cakes.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Those they taste good.
They're not bad. I admire that they're using all of the pig.
The whole animal.
But it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, was this recipe developed in a famine?
Oh yeah, that's an interesting way of, yeah, maybe.
I was definitely surprised by pork floss. The wildest fruit, it's so interesting, is that like the Buddha's head. It's like a green...
You mean the custard?
Yeah,
where
the
you can
custard
like
apple,
literally
yeah.
pull out little sections of it. Yeah.
And it tastes
like custard.
It tastes like custard, like warm ice cream.
I love that, from Taidong.
It's crazy.
They originate in Taidong, I
It's
think.
delicious.
So good.
So that is the most impressive, unique
the custard
flavor
apple.
I've had, is the custard apple, the Buddha's head fruit. The beetle nut, I think, is a little gross, but I'm not going to judge. I mean, I'm not.
Have you tried it?
No, I'm not going to try it.
I've tried it a few times many years ago. It's kind of like drinking a Red Bull. You know?
I mean, I might try it someday.
I mean, it might be interesting to try it once just to understand the enjoyment of it, but it's pretty gross.
Yeah, if I try it, it'll just say to say that I have. That's all. Yeah.
That'll be your thumbnail. You looking at a beetle nut and then
just spitting out that red wad.
Yeah, because you see the red on the ground sometimes. I'm like, can you guys
sometimes
please don't spit that on the ground?
I walk everywhere. I see it all the time.
Like you are staining the road and the sidewalk. Please.
I didn't know what it was at first.
Like blood or something.
And then I was like, what's all this? What is this stuff on the ground? And then I saw a guy spit it out. I was like, oh, all right.
Final question for you. You've lived through a lot of interesting times. Do you have any words of wisdom to share that you've learned about life?
We talked about it a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
I think if I could share one message like that, it would be to be real honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And live your life true to yourself.
Yeah.
Just
the authenticness.
Yeah, be authentic to who you are. You'll be a much happier person and healthier if you incorporate a little bit of exercise. Even walking.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference in your mood.
Yeah.
I think exercise is pretty essential if you want to have just a healthy mind
Good
and
for your
keep
brain.
emotional balance.
Yeah.